Welcome back. It is Wednesday. Jim Coyle with you as always, joined by the great Bob Kravitz from The Athletic. Robert, how are you, sir?
Fabulous, man. It's great golf weather. We got the draft coming up tomorrow. Got some mock drafts today in The Athletic, so everything is good. It's an interesting time.
Absolutely. Tomorrow night, big time. Find out what the Pacers get to pick and then what they decide to pick, of course. Saw your piece in this morning talking about Keegan Murray and Benedict Mathurin, which is where most people think is going to be the starting point for the post four. I'll call it the post four, I guess, which we all think that there's this four. You call it the line of demarcation behind the big three, Banchero, Chet Holmgren, Ivy, and who's the other dude?
Banchero, Holmgren. God, what is wrong with me?
See, I'm not the only one.
Yeah, with Banchero, Holmgren, Ivy, and Jabari Smith.
Who's expected to go number one?
He'll probably be number one.
He's expected to go number one. Yes. Indiana is sitting there at number 6. So you got that number 5 pick in between. So they're like not just after that. They got a spot in between, but it's like the next. Once you get that past that 4, the next 5 or 6, there's kind of a tumbler. You could just kind of throw them in, and people just have different opinions, whether it's Keegan Murray or Mathurin or whomever it might be.
Well, 2 things. First, the inflection point in the draft tomorrow night is going to be when Sacramento selects 4th. If they continue to select 4th and not make a deal. Now, everybody knows that Sacramento has not worked out or talked with Jaden Ivy. They are actively trying to get rid of that number 4 pick. Whether the Pacers can get involved in that, I don't know. The last I heard, Sacramento was asking for the number 6 pick and 2 number 1 draft choices in the future. I don't see the Pacers touching that. And then as far as the number 6 pick, I think it comes down to Mathurin and Dyson Daniels. And I did not initially have Dyson Daniels as a guy that I would have considered based on what I've been hearing. I mean, I've never seen the guy play. He played for the G League, and I don't watch G League. But talking to people down there, they love Dyson Daniels, even though he is more of a point guard than anything else, and they already have one in Tyrese Halliburton. They think he can play the 3 or the 2. Not a great shooter, great defender, terrific passer, a little bit like the Josh Giddey kid that Oklahoma City drafted out of Australia, like this kid. So I think it comes down to those 2 guys, unless Keegan Murray or, Jaden Ivy somehow falls to 6. I think those are the 2 guys they'll consider.
I was going to say, how much does it really matter once you get to the NBA? And even though obviously the Pacers are in Indianapolis and Indiana, and Ivy played at Purdue is still not the state, quote unquote, state school. How much would it matter from a for his play aside? What ancillary benefits, if any, would having Jaden Ivy play for the Pacers?
Well, I think automatically people are going to be interested. They're going to be excited to see this kid. I mean, a lot of these draftees, we don't get to see them play. Even Mathurin, he played out at Arizona, which is far past most of our bedtime, certainly me. Never seen Daniels play. He plays for the G League Ignite. So there's a lot of mystery for those of us who don't watch, lots and lots of tape. But I think getting Jaden Ivy in here would be, I think that would be a good thing as far as putting butts in the seats. I think he's an exciting player. It would be awesome. It would be absolutely awesome. I don't think it's going to happen.
Yeah, I mean the odds are that it doesn't. The only thing that would help is if there is a trade made in front that someone needs or different, or but um, probably not. It usually doesn't go down that way. But so let's say they end up with Keegan Murray.
Oh,
Uh,
I'll take Keegan Murray in a heartbeat. I mean, this is a guy who went from what 7, 9 points a game to 23 and a half
was just a monster, and
he
that
was a
was because
monster and he's a forward.
Luca Garza was in his way basically.
That's
He was
exactly it. That's exactly it. And he can shoot from anywhere. He is a professional scorer, and he can play some defense. I've heard people say he doesn't have this big upside. I'm like, that's just because you've seen him play and you're familiar with him. You look at Shaden Sharp and Dyson Daniels and some of these guys you haven't seen. You're like, oh, he's a home run. He's got the big upside. Go for what you know. And if Keegan Murray is somehow available, let me tell you this: we're doing a mock draft around noon at the Athletic, and if either Jaden Ivy or Keegan Murray is available when I'm picking for the Pacers, I'm picking one of those two dudes. If not, then it comes down to Matherin and Dyson Daniels, and I think I'll probably go with Matherin.
And speaking of the draft rooms, being in these war rooms, whatever you call them, whether it's the NFL or the NBA, they're Major League Baseball is different. It's got like 600 rounds of draft. So these two are the drafts that really kind of stand out, and they're very similar because of the last second changes, the trades, this and that, and the other thing. And there's always backstories. I've always wondered why the Pacers didn't take Larry Bird back in '78, and you had a story out a month or so ago about it. There's another one out today, and the Star,
really good.
Talking to Nancy, Slick Leonard's wife, who she seems like at 90, just reading their quotes, man, she seems like she's still sharp as a tack.
She is super sharp. Hey, like I told her, I said, you had to live with Slick all these years. You had to be on top of your game. She is a wonderful, wonderful lady. She's the first lady of Indiana basketball, as far as I'm concerned.
I agree.
But yeah, what it came down to is money. They were afraid that, since they couldn't draft them in '78, when they had the number 1 pick and eventually traded it away and took Rick Roby. But, because of that, they were afraid that they wouldn't be able to sign him the next year because, remember, they were only 2 years off doing a telethon to keep the team alive. And the finances weren't there. You had a lot of people making decisions who, probably shouldn't be making basketball decisions. You had a lot of financial people in other walks of life, and they decided that Rick Roby, as Dana mentioned in her story today, one of the people that they were speaking with said, well, my daughter goes to Kentucky. She thinks Rick Roby's a hell of a player. Well, yes, by all means, let's let somebody's daughter
just as good as Larry Bird is what she said. Remember?
Just as good as Larry Bird. The funny thing is, Bird and Roby became best buddies with the Boston Celtics. But can you imagine?
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Yeah, and can you imagine? You mentioned this off the air. If Larry had stayed at Indiana, he would have been graduating
at IU. We're talking about IU from '74 to '78.
If he had stayed, he would have been drafted. I mean, he was draft eligible anyway, but that would have been his senior year, '78. And the Pacers, you have to think, unless they're complete morons or have no finances. Remember, back in those days, they weren't slotted financially. It wasn't like if you're the first pick, you get X. No, it was free agency all over the place. And so I don't know that they would have gotten Larry, but you have to think that Larry would have loved to have stayed in the state of Indiana and played for the Pacers.
David jumps on. Just wanted to jump on during his break and say, hey, from Orleans, brother, we appreciate you always. Yeah, it really is sickening if you think about it as a fan, because he would have been at Indiana in 1974. He would have been on the 75 team, the 76 team, the 77 team, and on 78. And Indiana had some problems in 77, 78. So he would have cured those ills, went to the Pacers, and now he would have had some help around him. And that's another thing. Would the Pacers been able to put the help around him that he needed in the NBA?
Well, it wasn't a time of free agency. I don't know. That's a really good question. But remember, Larry went to a team in Boston that won 20 games the previous year. They had nothing. And Larry got there and turned them around completely. So,
but they had Robert Parrish and
Robert Parrish came along later, along with Kevin McHale, Dennis Johnson, people like that. But when he got there, they were a 20-win team, and
they had to have that pick, yeah,
right, exactly.
Brad asked, are there any highly rated international players that could sneak into the top four that we haven't talked about?
No.
Usually with all these mock drafts, they account for all those guys.
No, it's going to be Jabari Smith, not in any particular order. It's going to be Smith. It's going to be Banchero. It's going to be Chet Holmgren, and it's going to be Jaden Ivy. Those are your first four. There are foreign guys down later. Certainly, Matherin is Canadian. He's from Montreal, so if you consider that international basketball. Dyson Daniels, who the Pacers may pick, is from Australia. So there are some really good international players up high in the draft, but not in the top four. No.